Welcome to So Summit 2020. This time around, in our panel discussion, we're going to talk about the importance of legal consciousness for a startup. We're extremely delighted to be joined by Mr. Manik Mullah, founder M. Mullah Associates, an advocate and solicitor with over 20 years of experience. He's a fourth generation lawyer, having first worked in his family firm of Messrs. Mullah and Mullah and Craigie Blunt and Caro as a partner. Thereafter, he was a partner with Messrs. Vakaria and Vakaria, advocates and solicitors. He founded the firm of M. Mullah Associates in the year 2010. Mr. Manik extensively practices in the area of commercial laws, real estate, litigation and arbitration, and laws of succession. He has a robust practice in advising and negotiating on various types of commercial contracts. Mr. Mullah, thank you for joining us today on this panel discussion for So Summit 2020.
Thank you for having me on.
So let's get started. So my first question to you would be, we often use the word startups to describe businesses that have recently commenced with their business. Is there any legal definition to a startup or any particular law or legislation governing startups?
There's no particular law or legislation which governs startups. Basically, it would be the Companies Act or the LLP Act, depending on the structure you're going to choose. Though, however, the Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade, they send out notifications from time to time, and they have defined a startup to mean either a company or an LLP, which would be in existence for less than 10 years, having a turnover of less than 100 crores, and it has to be an entity which has not been formed because of a split of any two earlier entities. It has to be a fresh entity. It has to have an innovative and expansive business. And that's the broad outline of what a startup would be.
So, taking forward this point of LLP, we now see a lot of startups taking up the form LLP, like you just mentioned. What are your views on that? What factors do you think an entrepreneur should keep in mind when deciding a business structure on a broad level?
See, that question has two arms to it. One is about the LLP. Now, given that we are in a country which has laws which sometimes are over 100 years old, so let me say that the LLP Act is relatively a new act. It's relatively a new act. It came in force in 2008 or 2009, if my memory serves me correctly. Now, that firstly is a paradigm shift from the old partnerships, what we generally knew as partnership businesses, which were basically governed by the 1932 Act. That's very much in existence. But the LLP Act has now made the liability of the partners limited. So for a young entrepreneur, that's very important to understand, because when we say that the liability of a partner is limited, what used to happen in the, what I may call the old partnerships or the 1932 partnerships, what would happen is that if there is a liability, a creditor can even come after the partner personally. It doesn't just stop at the partnership firm. While on the other hand, you in the LLP, you've got a proper firewall. It's akin to a company, if I may say so. And the partner is never personally liable for any debt of the partnership. On the other aspect, Shilpa, what you were talking about is what should a young entrepreneur keep in mind when he's starting out a business. I would say when he's choosing a structure, one is on the aspect of personal liability or not. Tax efficiency is very important. What is the industry you are really going to be working in? That also plays a vital role. Compliances. Company compliances can be quite onerous, especially for a young guy starting up. So compliances plays a major role also in that. The smaller issues are the expense of starting up a company, a partnership or an LLP or a sole proprietorship. That's completely different. And finally, looking forward in time, also, if you plan to have future rounds of funding, then you choose a structure accordingly.
Great. So, Mr. Mullah, in terms of the founder agreements during the startup phase, what do you think would be the vital provisions or clauses founder agreements would contain or should contain?
Uh, it depends on whether you're starting the company by yourself, and it depends on whether you're starting a company with a partner, maybe a friend, maybe a brother, maybe a relative, maybe a college mate. How are you starting it? And I'll tell you why I make this differentiation. If you're starting it yourself, you make it a little easy. And founder agreements, what we call the charter documents of the companies, the charter documents of the company, are more or less standard. More an articles of association or a memorandum of association, per se, there is no rocket science to that if you're starting by yourself. However, I always advise clients that if you are starting in partnership with someone, you must have all your rights and obligations put down from day one. Whether then he's a relative, whether he's a brother, whether he's a friend, a college mate, as I said, because what typically happens, and experience has shown, the problems always start when the company does well. If the company doesn't do well, no one cares. But once those turnovers start ballooning and profits start ballooning, that's when the problems start. And if you are starting off as a partner with someone, and when I mean a partner, I'm using the word partner in the layman's sense. This would even apply if you're starting off with a company.
Correct.
You must have it clear from day one what is each one's management rights. If you're starting a company, what are your board rights? What are your general body rights? Things like exit options, things like day-to-day management, who calls the shots on day-to-day management, anti-dilution, and a very important clause would be non-compete.
So precisely all roles, responsibilities, duties, clauses,
Right.
or will matter put out there.
I always tell clients, the more painful the marriage, the happier it is. And the happier the marriage, when you just sign on the dotted line, it more often than not lands up in a divorce.
Oh my God, what a beautiful thought.
That's how I tell my clients.
And very easy to understand also, then you know what you're getting into.
Absolutely. From day one, your rights and obligations are set out or cast in stone.
Correct. Wonderful, Mr. Mullah. So I'm now going to shift gears. Do you think the importance of protecting one's IP has increased over the last decade? What measures do you think entrepreneurs should take to safeguard their IP? Is it important to safeguard your IP at first go?
I think if you don't safeguard your IP, you might as well shut down your company. Because IP is your goodwill, IP is your identity.
Correct.
Whether it's your trademark or it's your copyright, it's your brand name, trade name, artistic work, whatever it be in the form of IP, technical know-how. If you are going to be complacent on that, in my view, don't start, because that's what you've got to protect, and that's what gets the valuation.
Correct.
And as an advice to young entrepreneurs today, I would definitely say have your IPs registered on time. Follow that process. Can be a little painful and laborious, but follow that process definitely. What I would also say is be a little vigilant. And if someone infringing your IP rights, send a cease and desist notice. If it then has to be followed up with an injunction application, file a suit for injunction. Be vigilant about your IP. And of course, if God willing, your business is really going to grow and you want to expand, let's say by way of a franchise model, then if you're licensing your IP, see that your license is rock solid, that your licensee tomorrow cannot stake a claim to the intellectual property rights which you in fact have created.
Great. So we have spoken about the deed and the clauses that need to be included. We've spoken about IP, and now comes the big part, which is funding. What essentially, Mr. Mullah, if you're from your experience and expertise, if you would like to share, what essentially should entrepreneurs keep in mind during various rounds of funding?
To begin with, uh, I call it housekeeping.
Okay.
Day one, see that your housekeeping is up to the mark. And in housekeeping, what I mean is your compliances. Uh, we've had situations sometimes where when the first rounding of funding comes or the second, more often than not the first round of funding, because the investors more often than not then make you run in a more professional and a more professional manner.
Yes.
But having said that, we have sometimes come across cases, believe it or not, where it's, let's say, a company is going for first round of funding and minutes of meetings have not been kept, or
Okay.
some ROC returns have not been filed, or intimation of a director being appointed has not been done. So, to begin with, investors want to see a compliant house. So, they want to see that your housekeeping is up to the mark. And that in the long run will help because that takes through the due diligence process in a very smooth manner. Otherwise, you're going to be hit with a barrage of questions and clarifications that why is this not there, why is that not there, etc. So, as I said, that's in round one is the housekeeping. And then I would broadly, it's a very broad question you've put to me. I would repeat what I said about when you're starting off with a friend or with a partner. You've got to keep, so assuming that Mr. A, who's an entrepreneur, he's starting his company by himself, and 2-3 years later he's going in for his first round, or 5 years later he's going for his first round. Those same rights and obligations, please see that they are correctly put down in your agreement. So tomorrow you're not left sobbing. On a different note, I would also say that when the investors come in, they see valuation in the company.
Correct.
And they do sometimes give you a little unachievable targets. So I would say a young entrepreneur ought to be a little cautious. I'm not saying don't be confident, but be cleverly cautious. Uh, you see, what happens is that you may be in your late 20s, and suddenly someone comes and says, I'm putting down 40 crores in your company. You've never seen such money.
Correct.
And you're an ambitious guy. You think you'll take the company through the roof. And the investor says that I want these sort of performances. Be realistic. Can you achieve them? Can you not achieve them? Because very often than not, the agreements go in a way that if you don't match your performance, you start getting diluted. So do you want to start getting diluted?
Very easy to get carried away that way.
You get carried away. And young blood, because we're talking about young blood, carried away, not seen this sort of money. And those are sort of issues one should keep in mind. In fact, I remember once I was doing a funding for a hospitality chain, and the investor gave some crazy number of outlets which have to be opened. And the client had signed it. And then he regretted those numbers. He did regret those numbers. So you have to be smart and cautious.
What wonderful takeaway there, Mr. Mullah. Extremely significant point, and put it out such a beautiful way, in a simple way. I think when it comes to startups, it has to be from the word go, and it's an everyday process of vigilance.
Absolutely.
So that you never detour from your way.
That's true.
Moving forward, Mr. Mullah, I'm going to ask you one more question. What are your views on government policies relating to startups?
I really don't know how much has really percolated, or the transformation of what has been announced or whatever. I don't have personal knowledge of that. But yes, our government has been pro startups. The present government has been pro startups, Digital India, Make in India. Even just now during this horrendous pandemic, the swaps they are giving the small scale and medium scale industries for the loans, the moratoriums. So there is no doubt that the intention is very much there by the government. They want to encourage startups. How it is transforming, I haven't seen much of it, but I'm sure it will fold out
Eventually.
eventually.
At least that's the positive intention.
Absolutely. At least the intention is there.
Yes.
The intention is there. You see, this intention at the end of the day, digressing for a moment, the intention of the end of the day really, especially when you're talking to a young entrepreneur, you're talking about let's say a young lady in a mid 20s or a young guy in his mid 20s, and he wants to start up. Okay, so these are the great, various schemes which may have been launched, etc.
Correct.
But it's very cliche. We've heard this several times across media, but the true thing should be the ease of doing business,
Correct.
ease of getting your license, the ease of getting your approval. And that's where a young person gets a bit bogged down. If that is brought in place, coupled with these sort of schemes of the government, I'm sure India will boom even more.
Fabulous. So now let me shift gears here, and I'm going to ask you from government policies, from funding to government policies, and now to something which is your specialization. At what stage do you think an entrepreneur should approach a lawyer?
See, being a lawyer, I'll say from stage one, because then I'll get my fees. But on a serious note, yes, it should be from stage one. Okay. And especially, I'll tell you why. And I'll tell you why I say from stage one. 2-3 important aspects. One is your IP.
Correct.
If you're starting a product, you're starting a brand, you should get your brands registered, etc.
Correct.
The other thing is acquisition of properties. Let's take that as bare minimum. Even if it's something as simple as a license agreement, or if you're buying some land, or you're buying a warehouse, or you're buying some sort of immovable property. The last thing as a startup you don't want is you go buy a lemon. That's the last thing you want, because at the right time, like every businessman, you may want to leverage your asset.
Correct.
And your title turns out to be faulty. The bank credit panel does not pass your title. You understand?
Yes.
Tomorrow, whilst your business is running, someone makes some adverse claim on your property.
Yeah.
Or someone makes an adverse claim on your IP. So according to me, a tax advisor, an accountant, and a lawyer should be part of the team from day one.
Because then the entrepreneur or the startup, team can do what they do best.
Is making the business grow and earning the money.
Yes.
Exactly.
Thank you, Mr. Mullah. And that we're kind of getting close to this panel discussion. Last couple of questions I'm going to ask you. The first one, considering the heavy backlog of cases across various courts in this country, what are your views on alternative dispute resolution? Can you take us through ADR procedures that you would recommend and why?
Unfortunately, the backlogs got a little worse with the present pandemic,
yes.
But the judges are really burning the midnight oil, but it's getting a little worse.
Yeah.
Having said that, ADR, I strongly advocate ADR. It's mediation and it's arbitration. Mediation, per se, I am a settling lawyer. I always say, take a dispute to court as the last resort.
Correct.
Because you're going to be stuck there for years and sometimes you won't see results for years. Unfortunately, that's the truth, and it does happen.
Yes.
So one is try and settle your dispute. Because if you can settle your dispute through mediation, you can focus your synergies on, in fact, growing your business rather than fighting a court case.
Yes.
And you're even saving a lot of man hours and you're saving a lot of money.
True.
So mediation, I would always say that try out mediation first. If you can get that, if you can settle your dispute even at a 10% haircut or a 15% haircut, it's worth it. And at the end of the day, whether you are a young businessman or a seasoned businessman, you are here to do business and not to fight. So they always have a practical view.
Correct.
So you have to try and encourage them to take that practical view at the earliest. On another note, arbitration. But arbitration is not the cheapest option. It's not a very expensive option, not the cheapest option. But thanks to the recent amendments, it's now a very quick option. The law now says that the arbitration must end within 1 year from the completion of filing of the pleadings by both the parties. So it has definitely expedited, I would say, claims and hearings have obviously gone much faster than in the court, and results are seen.
All right. So that's a good takeaway for all those entrepreneurs. Focus their energies on what matters the most.
Absolutely.
As a last thought, Mr. Mullah, based on your experience, what are the most common legal mistakes entrepreneurs tend to make, and how can they be avoided?
I think the single, you see, uh, an young entrepreneur is excited.
Correct.
Uh, he has great ambition. He just wants that top line to go up really fast. He wants the bottom line balloon fast. Good luck to you. I'm glad everyone do that. But what also tends to happen is that being a young startup, you're at the receiving end on the bargain, on the negotiating table. Because when you're negotiating with a large corporate on the other side, whether it's to your supply chain or whether it's your customer who you want to supply to, and you've got 1,000 or a 5,000 or a 10,000 crore company sitting on the other side. So firstly, you do tend to be at the receiving end of the negotiations.
Correct.
And what does happen? I wouldn't call it greed of doing business, but the ambition to just grow, you keep signing on the dotted line without reading anything. And experience has shown that these blind signing of contracts for the sole purpose of increasing one's business, people have lived to regret it very badly. Because you have to see your obligations and rights under the agreement. You have to see that out of 10 clauses, 8 should not be dead against you.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, then when there is a dispute, the first thing which is going to be flung at you is that you're an educated person. You've signed it. How can you back out of it?
Yes.
So that is one very, very common mistake I have seen. And another mistake which I have seen, which we've already discussed, is having a sort of a lackadaisical attitude on your IP rights. You should not do that. You should be vigilant about your IP from day one, because that at the end of the day is your goodwill.
Correct. So wonderful, Mr. Mullah. Beautiful takeaways, a balanced outlook and attitude towards working, having a good team that works with you and helps you push forward while you do your job of achieving your dreams and they take care of the rest.
Absolutely. You hit the nail on the head.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Mr. Mullah. It's been a pleasure to interview you and get your thoughts and experience. Thank you for joining us at So Summit.
Thank you so much. Thank you.